Welcome back. I hope you are doing great. So far, in all the sections we have seen or we have practiced, we have been discussing about the structured APIs, specifically data frames. What are data frames? How can we transform the data frames? And how do we perform the actions on different transformations what we have built on the data frames? Data frames, data frames, data frames. As a part of this section, we'll look at low level APIs. By the way, do you guys remember what is low level API? I think you would have heard about low level APIs, right? It is one of the components of Spark. Where is that component? We can see the low level APIs as a part of one of the components of Spark. So we do have structured APIs, we have streaming, advanced analytics, libraries and ecosystem. We have concentrated so far on data frames at large because data frames are the important data structures which are used in Spark. But we need to understand low level APIs because they're also important in few aspects. There are two sets of low level APIs. One is RDDs for manipulating the distributed data. And we do have a variable which are for distributing and manipulating the distributed shared variables. These are the two low level APIs which are available as a part of the Spark. But the question now is we do have data frames, we have data sets, we have Spark SQL, and we do have RDDs and distributed variables as a part of the low level APIs. When do we really need to use them? We can use them in some occasions, like when a functionality that cannot be found in the higher level APIs. Whenever you need to implement a functionality which is not really there as a part of the higher level APIs, that is structured APIs, that is data frames, that is when you should be using the low level APIs. For example, if you want to have a better control over the physical data placement across the clusters, you have to use the low level APIs because in case of structured APIs, the Spark will override your way of physical placement of the data. But in case of low level APIs, Spark will not override your option. It will just listen to you whatever you're specifying in terms of physical data placement, like partitions and all those things. The next occasion where you can use the low level APIs is to maintain the legacy code base. As we know, before Spark 2.0, we didn't have data frames. We had only RDDs. So lot of the code has been written already in RDDs. So whenever you got to maintain a code which is already written much before Spark 2.0, that is when you need to know what are RDDs, what are low level APIs. Okay. And also, whenever you want to do some custom shared variable manipulation, that is when you should be using the low level APIs. So these are the important three reasons why you got to use the low level APIs. Now the question is, any other reasons for us to use the low level APIs apart from whatever we discussed? Can you just think of? Yes, there are some other reasons for us to use the low level APIs. Some of them are, even though you are writing a code in data frame, all the Spark workloads compile down to the fundamental primitives. When I say fundamental primitives, we're talking about the RDDs here. So even though you write a code in data frame, But under the hood, while compilation, Spark is converting them into the RDDs. Any data frame transformations are actually a set of RDD transformations. As we observed in the previous point, Spark workloads compiled onto the fundamental primitives. Means whenever you do a transformation and data frame, under the hood, it is the RDD transformations. That is the reason it is important to know what are low level APIs. If you understand the internals, it is easy to debug whenever we are writing the complex transformations as a part of the data frame as well. And there are many occasions you have to drop down to the low level APIs to complete your task. Maybe many reasons are there which you will encounter as a part of your project. Some of them, like using the legacy code, which we have already discussed. And if you want to implement the custom partitioner, you got to resort to the low level APIs. And if you want to update and track the value of a variable over a data pipelines execution, that is when you have to resort to the low level APIs. Those are the important occasions or reasons for which we need to use the low level APIs. Now that we understood what are the reasons for us to use the low level APIs, how do we really use them? It's very simple. Whenever we want to use the low level APIs, we have to go through Spark context. Spark context is the entry point for low level API functionality. That means that if you want to work on the RDD, you have to go through the Spark context. Okay, we can access the Spark context by using this following call. Just you say you can access the Spark context by invoking that after spark context. Okay, if you want to work on RDD, you have to go through this. Anyway, when we take the examples, it will be a bit more clearer for you. Wonderful. This was the introduction for low level APIs. We will move on and understand at a high level about RDDs and distributed variables in the upcoming lectures. Thank you.